like all right. Geshe is here, so we'll get started momentarily. So I'm just going to turn the volume down so we don't get feedback, but we will have questions, of course, at the end. If something goes wrong with the sound or picture, just wave your hand in the panel and I will see you. Is that it? Is that it? Wait. So can everyone see both myself and Geshe, and can everyone hear us okay? All right. Yeah, Geshe was like, did you prepare it well today? I know, touch and go. Oh, sorry, that was just for me. So first of all, good morning, Tashidele. Greetings to all of you. Geshe hopes that you are all well, and he hopes that you are all happy. So on the basis of this human rebirth, the work that we're engaged in today, it is kind of the greatest work. It is the most meaningful work. So really, engage in these activities with a happy mind based upon that understanding. So then think also that I'm not just engaging in these activities for the benefit of myself alone. I'm engaging in these activities to be able to lead both myself and others to perfect happiness. And in this way, let us engage and make this work that we engage in something vast, something meaningful. So when we look at the situation of the world, right, we're very much interested in the situation of the world. Like, what are the important things that are going on? Who are the powerful people? What are the various events that are unfolding and so forth? But actually, if we think about these things, because they are in the nature of samsara, because they are in the nature of cyclic existence, they're not something that is really that incredible or that surprising, really. So if the most important thing is if we can, in addition to our interest in the worldly things, direct some of our interest to those things related to the Dharma. So if we think, what are a Buddha's qualities? What are a Bodhisattva's qualities, and so forth? And not just reflect on that, but develop a real feeling of appreciation for those things. This is something that is really going to benefit us. So Geshe said, a lot of the things that we pay attention to, like maybe our acquaintance's new car and so forth, his new car isn't really going to bring us benefit, is it? But appreciating those qualities of those holy beings, that is something very different. And we really want to be able to develop sort of, a feeling for that appreciation. So Geshe is saying that actually, if we think about it in terms of actually bringing forth realization, this is not something that is so easy. So although it might not necessarily be that easy to bring forth realization based upon the teachings we receive, because we know that requires contemplation, meditation, and so forth. But if we are able to develop a feeling for the teachings, an affinity with the teachings, then on the basis of that, we ourselves will be more happy and relaxed. Our family and friends will be more happy and relaxed, and we can become a source of peace for all the sentient beings, humans, animals, and so forth in our lives. And on the basis, right, of kind of bringing forth that awareness as a first step, whether we are a Buddhist or not, whether we are a Dharma practitioner or not, on the basis of being a kind person, on the basis of being a relaxed and peaceful person, we can already be of great benefit. And so actually becoming a kind person, becoming a good person, we know that this is not something that depends upon something external, right? The doer of whether we become a good person or a kind person is our own mind. And for that reason, in the teachings, so much of what is being explained is how the mind functions, how to transform, and so forth. Oh, right. So then Geshe said, as a first step, let us begin the meditation just to relax our body and mind, to bring the four elements within us into harmony. Think that mind, which in the traditional understanding is at the heart, it is something that is vast, unencumbered, like the sky. But even so, that vast spaciousness is the basis for the arising of all of our activities, thoughts, and so forth. And think that these thoughts and so forth, they are just like the clouds in the vast sky. And those clouds, in particular, the ones that are unwholesome thoughts, that are not beneficial thoughts, and so forth. Let us think that just like the warmth of the sun dissolves those clouds, that these thoughts dissolve into the vastness of the mind. So although this vastness is fundamentally kind of neutral, the mind's nature is neutral, we understand that if we bring it into the direction of what is good, of what is wholesome, based upon that mind's fundamental vastness and clarity, we can reach the perfection of any good quality.
알아서 기본에 가시 제가 생제 소화관리 지나 소소가 주도 맞잖아. 아니 세월 무슨 매 있었고 다다 되어요.
We also understand that any unhappy thought or feeling that arises within the mind, because it does not exist inherently, we can dissolve it back into the mind's vastness.
소승이네 가서 터도 tembal도 시진이나 되네. 세대 쇼바도 니지쇼. 요리 제바지다 니다 니다 야야노리 정해다 나로서 스탠드이 소토바시에
So think in terms of our own mind. We are going to try to direct it to these positive qualities of love and compassion. And in terms of these qualities of love and compassion, we want to be able to bring them forth and strengthen them so that just like the new moon gradually from day to day until the middle of the month becomes the full moon, those positive qualities increase and increase. And then from our side, making the requests to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to assist us with this, may they bestow their blessings. So we'll pause there. We'll do a short mandala. So And the last prayer is the refuge in bodhicitta.
Sonju Judon Zoju Junam La Jongju Bardu Dani Jazoju Dagi Chenyen Gibi Sunanji Jola Benjir Sonju Joba Sho Zonji Judon Zoju Junam La Jongju Bardu Dani Jazoju Dagi Chenyen Gibi Sunanji Jola Benjir Sonju Joba Sho Zonji Judon Zoju Junam La Jongju Bardu Dani Jazoju Dagi Chenyen Gibi Sunanji Jola Benjir Sonju Joba Sho. Oh yeah, this one. What tengo tener toda ni le jawani stano to gewa kadi jebayina ta halere ka chimbata males.
So, of course, we know that when we engage in what is virtuous, then the activities at the beginning and the activities at the end are very important.
Me kachi mo kandisirin ngaro sutana tez tungyares. Pena shawa mai bata shawa duja nesa shuchimbo to chimbo do kazin dis na me toyas momo diwas.
And actually, if we think about it, there's a real reason for this. Even if we look at sort of unwholesome activities, we can see how with all of the parts in place, those unwholesome activities become something powerful, maybe even become something dangerous.
What I shall my be sure to laying and bug show the young just a soon demotion the Kacheva is that Jupiter tell me to put this to shoot him out. What then what you would do us?
So why are those seemingly negative or unwholesome activities so powerful in the world? Well, it's because of habituation. The beginning, middle, and end of the activities are all complete. And so for that reason, they are very powerful.
Oh, that's your dog's okay. Yes, that you are tied to the shower about to some bus at this, and as most so, they would say, they would lay all that led to your motor. And
so in terms of the person who is engaging in those negative activities, it is nominally the person, the being oneself, and then that is connected with the mind. And then the compulsion to engage with what is negative is driven by karma and affliction.
Oh, that is losing a also, yeah, wronging your Jetuchiba, Yerino the Jetuchiba, and that call Jetuchiba Mevazuka is also pray the issue in the means of the
And because we want to be able to get rid of one's negativities along with the causes, because we want to be able to end samsara, cyclic existence, as well as its causes, then those positive, wholesome activities that we bring forth as opponents, these must also be complete in the beginning, middle, and end.
Oh, Kakoin, the Tony, the Seki woman, Senate Peto, Magawachina Peto, Madu, that daily tape. In a tool, the Tonilla, oh, that's also pretty second Nipatonilla, Kangame was well, Talikas chick.
So merely disliking samsara, the difficult situations of our lives and cyclic existence, merely being unhappy in samsara, we know that that is not a solution, right? That is not going to solve the long-term problem. What we need to think is, I'm going to try to bring forth those positive mental qualities. I am going to try to tap into the fundamental power of my mind. This is very important to do.
Oh, that is Sudio to Sama Tana Pets, our Koroso, so Sudio to Sama Nama, Yeterji Tonilla. Sujinama to Sama Nama, Rosaki, Yetonilla, says you children, children like a.
So if we think of those that are the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas now, in many cases, what they did is they thought about the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that preceded them, those holy beings that preceded them, and their positive mental qualities and all that they were able to accomplish. And in this way, they were able to strongly encourage themselves.
You want to quite another Jitonilla.
Yeah.
You say you children, oh, Tangishu Madonna. Yeah, Kangal Kang in the check, Taropa the check, you say you children to power channel like a chimbo channel.
Sometimes those beings that became Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, when they were cultivating, they thought about the problems of samsara, about the problems of a cyclic existence. And they thought, my goodness, not just myself, but all of these sentient beings are facing these problems within a cyclic existence. If I really want to help all of these beings who are fundamentally close to me, then what I need to do is to be able to bring forth my positive mental qualities, is to be able to bring forth realization. And so that was another way that they thought. Yeah. 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 So Geshe said there was like a meeting. I was like, is this a real story? Yes. So Geshe was saying there was like a meeting of all of these enlightened beings, of all of these Buddhas, and they were looking at the state of the world, of our world within samsara. And they were saying like, who is going to go there to kind of assist sentient beings? And because this time in the world is so difficult, because beings are so hard to tame, initially there weren't that many people that volunteered. It was only Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of this time, who volunteered to go. Sorry. So Geshe said you can see it very clearly, right, why perhaps they didn't want to volunteer. In terms of the beings of this world, they have like a natural liking for those activities that are unwholesome, for those activities that are not good. You know, they're very like kind of deeply habituated to that, and that makes them kind of very difficult to help. And it was because it is so hard for us to tame our minds that aside from Shakyamuni Buddha, none of them were going to come down during this difficult period. And so if we think of all of the times in the past, and we also think of all of the time that we might have in the future, to have these conditions right now makes this one of the most precious times, one of the most important times for cultivation. So if we think of the text of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, the Bodhisattva's way of life by Shantideva, we talk about the activities being important in the beginning and the activities being important in the end. And we can see that from the And because the activities at the beginning and at the end are very important, in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, we see that the first chapter is describing all of the benefits of bodhicitta, and the final chapter is a dedication of all of the merits accumulated. So we can see from how that book of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara was composed, describing the benefits of bodhicitta at the beginning and dedicating the merits accumulated at the end, that the activities at the beginning and the end are particularly important. And so then along with the chapter at the beginning and the chapter at the end, it is said that in terms of the 6 perfections, that the chapter on the perfection of giving or generosity is particularly important. So Geshe was saying that I was saying, maybe explain this more because maybe I don't think people would maybe necessarily see how this is connected. So because you're dedicating your merits to others, right? The final chapter, this also elevates the chapter on generosity, the perfection of generosity. Why? Because when we dedicate our merits to the benefit of others, that is a very profound act of generosity. So there are many things that are important to understand there, and we can come to a further discussion. So because the nature of the mind, the bare nature of the mind is something that is neutral, it is neither negative nor positive. This means that the mind can be directed in the direction of unwholesome or wholesome. So let us take a moment to settle and relax the mind. So we want to be in a relaxed posture, but in an upright posture so that the channels and the winds are flowing. I think I'm trying to bring the channels, the chakras, and the prana, the wind or the energies within those, into equilibrium. And I do this by bringing forth relaxation. Don't observe the wayward thoughts arising in your mind. Focus your mind on the breath. Breathing in, I'm aware of breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware of breathing out. And as we exhale, we can think along with that exhalation of the stale air, any thoughts or feelings that are unbeneficial, they're out of our body. And as we breathe in what is energizing and wholesome with the inhalation.
And
as we observe our inhalation and our exhalation, we can contemplate by seeing how what arises, the breath, also falls away. Everything is in a state of change. There is nothing that is stable or permanent. And the person that is breathing, that is connected with the mind. And the mind and the feelings, these are something that are momentary. They are changing from moment to moment. There's nothing that is permanent nor solid there. And also, it's comforting to know that those difficult feelings, that those mental projections and suspicions, they also are just arising and falling away. There is nothing there that is stable nor permanent.
这个就是没有记录要的，什么东西谈到把那个时候也看看考了第二个。
This thought that there's some kind of stable essence to these appearances, that there's some sort of pinpointable existence to these appearances. This is what has kept myself. This is what has kept others circling in cyclic existence in samsara. This kind of confusion is a fundamental unknowingness, an unknowingness of the way that things really are. And that it is this unknowingness that keeps us circling within samsara. So having this human rebirth with this human brain and this intelligence, then we use that intelligence to develop the knowledge of how things really are. Once we have realized how things really are, we can then assist other sentient beings in developing that same realization. So bring this thought through realizing this wisdom, then may I be able to bring both myself and others to Buddhahood. With this wisdom, may I bring forth Buddhahood and lead sentient beings to that same state. Meditate on bodhicitta.
I
definitely can do this. I can achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, and to assist me are the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I will develop stable faith or confidence and refuge in them. Through bringing forth this virtuous mind and intention, I dedicate this to all of the negativities that I have been accumulated, not just in this life, but from lifetime to lifetime in the past. May those negativities be completely cleared away. Yeah. So we'll pause there. I'm thinking that the brightness of the sun may be distracting for folks who are watching us. So let me just close the blind a little bit. Yeah. We also can't see you because of the glare of the sun. So I'm just going to close it a bit. It's one of those fall days where the clouds and the sun are kind of mixed up. all those there. Now I can see all that.
다시 부터 관계 숨겨야래. 내가 알아서 내가 시키는 뭐 있나래. 아니 레는 바 있나래. 무게와 가리 있나요. 그래서 레티 지요래. 알아서 내가 전에 그래서 휴전도 니빠주는 나와서야지. 때 그래서 이제 됐다.
And the great teachers of the past, they have said that these things that are unwholesome, such as the afflictions, negative karma, and so forth, that they all possess one positive quality. And that positive quality is that if we do the work to diminish them, they can definitely be diminished and eventually cleared away completely.
그래서 what did you 그래서 뭐다 이렇게 좀 보면 다 대부분은 다 이제 우주가 지어도 다 순지지 공부를 받아 다 만원 다 차츠만 눈
And then to be able to reach that state of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, we need a method. We need a method that is both complete and unmistaken.
Geshe melo segundo as. Geshe melo será Geshe será zumbi sheva. Zumbi sheva alo zi java yena sheva zumbo kandiwa pajasa.
So Geshe is saying, in terms of the title of this text, the King of Prayers, it is actually known as the Arya Prayer of Good Actions. So Geshe said, if you think about that, you can think of good actions. Those are actions that are good. It's sometimes translated as conduct, but I think actions is more effective here. So it's actions that are good.
Because was what I she was on but she was on but the guys she was on but much she was on but she was on Moyo was she was on.
And here we're not just talking about any kind of good actions, not like the good actions of an ordinary being, right? Here we are specifically speaking about the good actions of those holy beings, the bodhisattvas.
Oh, they were the she was on what she was on the literature she was on but she was on but he just on Bazumbo. And
when we speak of good actions of the bodhisattvas, we're not just speaking of one type of good actions. We're talking about those holy actions of body, actions of speech, and actions of mind. So good actions of body, speech, and mind.
And
also it is said that when we engage with this king of prayers, right, of the noble conduct of the good actions of the Aryas, it is very important that we don't just do this as a prayer of like, may this come about. Actually, what we want to do when we pray in this way is we want to think, Ngarang Rangi Legadichigi. I want to realize the meaning of this prayer within my own mind. This is very important.
Oh, that needs a sabasabada, which is a teaching a Kazukan, so you send us in a passion, Mandiba met, which is with us. So Geshe
said recently, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he was sharing during an advice that he said, you know, I probably couldn't say that I have I am not a bodhisattva. So if people say that I'm a bodhisattva, one couldn't say that that's completely untrue. Something like that. And that's the same thing that we need to do, right? We need to, on the basis of our understanding of this, integrate the conduct, the good deeds of a bodhisattva into ourselves. So then Geshe said, when we understand the title of this prayer, right, this is something that should kind of bring some happiness into our mind. We feel like a sense of happiness. So we don't feel bored or something like that. So last time, in terms of what we covered the name of this text, which is the Aryabhadra Charya Pranidhana Raja. So that's the noble king of prayers of good actions. And we also covered the verse of homage, which I'm not sure if all of you have in your text, but the verse of homage is, I bow to the youthful Arya Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And so there are various reasons that the translators added these verses of prostration. One of these reasons has to do with the accumulation of merit. As it is stated, one who possesses great merit is able to accomplish their aims exactly as they wish. So it's for the translators to be able to complete their aim. And also we gave an explanation of how the prostration to Manjushri tells you which of the three baskets of the teaching that this is. And so Geshe explained not only the point of view of the three baskets, but also which of the three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom they are connected to. And so Geshe said that in terms of when we speak about what a prayer is, we can understand that a prayer is a hope. And in addition to that being a hope, it is also a cause of accumulation and purification. And in terms of the accumulation of merit and purification of negativities, we have kind of a formula of steps that we go through. And this well-known formula of steps is the 7 limbs or the 7 branch practices. So when we speak about the 7 limbs, we speak about the limb of prostration, the limb of offering, the limb of confession, the limb of rejoicing, the limb of requesting. Then requesting to turn the Dharma wheel and requesting not to pass into nirvana. Yeah, and the dedication as the final. Sorry about that. I always get the order mixed up, so I always like to check. So Geshe said, why do we call them the 7 limbs, right? The 7 limbs. Because just as a person or a being who has all of their limbs intact is able to effectively engage in various kinds of work, these allow us to effectively accumulate and purify. So our main task here is that we want to accumulate as much merit and purify as much negativity as possible. And this is very doable when we have all of these 7 limbs, these 7 branches in place. This one, so Geshe said that in terms of the verses, the first of the 7 limbs is a prostration. So in terms of the verses of prostration, there's kind of like short prostration and an extensive prostration. And so last time we covered the first verse, O lions amongst men, finishing, I bow down with my body, speech, and mind. Here, this is considered the brief prostration. Yeah, And then there is a kind of more vast presentation of this prostrating with the body, prostrating with the speech, and prostrating with the mind.
Oh, yeah, that me also so that
Yes. So Geshe said, please, for those of you who have the text, I think it's available on our website. If you don't, please follow along.
Okay, then no cover my
It's just like don't recite it in a bored way like Kedrip. I don't think my way is bored, reflective.
Zombo shape, Melo Tota, Java 20 years. So
we are on verse number 2. On waves of strength of this king of prayers for exalted sublime waves, with bodies as numerous as atoms of the world, I bow down to the Buddha's pervading space.
That's see Tamate
Yeah. So Geshe said that actually when you're trying to understand this verse, it's good to actually begin with the last line. I bow down to the Buddha's pervading space. Yes, yeah. And why? Because that says I bow down. So, I am prostrating. I am bowing down. And that's bowing down with the body. And so I'm bowing down, I'm prostrating with my body, but to what object am I bowing down? Yeah. And so there are many kind of, meaningless or worldly things that I could bow down to, but I am not bowing down to something meaningless. I am bowing down to the Buddhas themselves. Actually, it's So although it says the Buddha themselves, the word here in the Tibetan is Gyalwa. So if you wanted to do it really literal translation, you could say I bow to the conquerors. It means Buddha, but it's just another word for it. And I'm bowing to all of the Buddhas of the 3 times, as was mentioned previously. To the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, I offer prostration with my body.
And
so why? The next question that comes up is why? Why do I offer to bow? Why do I offer prostrations to the Buddhas of the past, present, and future? Well, because of their qualities. Because of their qualities.
Huh? Yeah.
I bow to them because of the I bow to them because of their king-like qualities. And I bow to those bodies as numerous as atoms of the world, understanding that the Buddha's bodies are limitless. They can manifest limitless bodies in order to bring benefit to sentient beings. Yeah. So in terms of all of the cultivation that we are engaging in practice, in terms of all of the positive karma that we are accumulating in practice, a big part of why we need to do this is to be able to defeat the maras, of the Ledu Bedurua. So the the Mara of the aggregates, the Mara of the afflictions, the Mara of death, and the Mara of the son of the gods. These four Maras.
어다 나로서 야 되면 이 된다. 같이 요아래 손 디서 손지 강가 디서 손지 강가 대도 야 대도 자와 있다. 어느 자시 뭐래.
So we work in our cultivation to be able to defeat these four Maras. Because the Buddhas of the four times have already defeated these four Maras or demons, they are worthy of homage. They are worthy of prostration.
어다 알레미게 되면 디지케자 뭐뭐가 디자라요. 라바도 차와 다트니케자 뭐요아레스.
And also, Geshe said there's different presentations of these four Maras on the coarse level, on the subtle, and this and so forth. But this explanation will do for now.
다원은 나로서 단다 샤차야 되는 거로서 소소 리치 말이요 말아왔어. 대치보게 단이 샤차가 대좀도 돈이 샤차가 돼 말레스. 아니 리다도 뭐도 뭐 되는 데가 샤차이스.
And so Geshe said that similarly, when we offer the prostration, we don't offer prostration just with our body, but as we talked about all of those many Buddhas that exist in the 10 directions, we offer also prostration with our body as numerous as atoms in the world.
하고서라와스 빼는 거로서 샤차가 깔에 단다 소소 사전되는 샤차가라와스 산되는 고 센지 사절라 마디 바다 사이도 가제요가 이나요. 얘도 도도 녀마소노 돈에 당아
So it is said that, for example, when one is engaging in physical prostration, one imagines that the ground that one is extended upon, all of the particles and so forth in that ground, from sort of the surface of the earth down to the end of this realm, it is with bodies as many as those particles that one offers prostration.
그래서 어다 소노도 가르토니 샤차기 예산아 좀보시 변명로 또다기.
And what are we thinking? What are we thinking when we offer prostration? We think sampo chepe monomto doji.
변명로 또다 드디 소노 돈이라.
Yeah. On the basis of the strength of this king of prayers, we are prostrating and offering those prostrations to all the conquerors.
대바 마임바. 대바 마임바도 자세 뒤져라 지단다 공유 말아왔어. 이나 니가 될라. 또 디가 니바 디가. 니가 될 다 그도마존에 매로.
So Geshe said, when we say on the waves of strength of this king of prayers for exalted sublime ways, when we talk about the strength, topdi jangchup semkuki topdi, right?
민가로서 손을 또 걸어왔어. 아주 예세비에 대해서 손을 또 보이는데라. 이또 니바 디가. 니가 될 마대발라서 강가 동화선에 It
is the strength of thinking about all of the Bodhisattva's great conduct. Yeah. And so it is because we haven't yet achieved those same qualities ourselves, right? We don't yet have that state of happiness that they do, but we can bring forth the strength of that quality.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, when we think about the Bodhisattva's qualities, their love, compassion, their bodhicitta, and so forth, at the moment when we are contemplating this, whatever is troubling our mind, troubling our heart, making us unhappy, making us feel nervous, that momentarily goes away. And then we have the strength of that. So for example, if we're attending a teaching of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama is explaining all of the wonderful positive qualities and so forth of realization, holy beings and so forth, at the moment, if we're attuned to that, at that moment, then whatever feelings were bothering us, whatever difficulties were bothering us, these are dissipated. So when we speak of the strength, we are speaking of the power. And so because of the strength, because of the power of remembering those qualities, then at that moment, right, things cannot really bother us.
또 니네도 먼저 주주 소디와 와서 주주 소디.
Yeah.
뭔가 또 니네도 디디마도 위요 말해.
Yeah. So Geshe said, in terms of actually possessing this strength, the strength is something that comes in the 37 limbs of enlightenment. Within the 37 limbs of enlightenment, there are the 5 powers. And so until we come to that power, we don't actually really possess that strength, right? But through recollecting in this way, we have something similar to that.
그래서 다 지금 리주권을 샤차와 될 리중매바 소지도 소지 선바송 동매바라와 대노지 리소소 리중매바 드니전 샤차기도 다 겨와 빠든가 사거든요.
So Geshe said that in this prayer, we are accumulating exponential merit. Why is this the case? Because we are prostrating to limitless, uncountable Buddhas, like all of those atoms or whatever, and we are doing this with limitless, uncountable bodies, like all of those particles in the earth and so forth. So the prostrator and what we're prostrating to are both limitless.
다 야라마 가지고 야라마 친구들이 다 스포르 뭐 라마들이 와서 요아서 도와서 건도 가르스 위해서 나를 다 스포르이 되게 계속 체조 가려서나 쏴잡을 가능하 겨와 계속 지어스
The ginger super mayin.
So
Geshe said that many of the great lamas who had sort of a very tall stature, they said that the main benefit, right, there were some difficulties, but the main benefit of tall stature was that they could cover more ground with more atoms, which gave more merit to the prostration.
Yes, but
Geshe said if you're a tall person and you never make prostrations, then your tall body is probably of absolutely no benefit.
Yes, that they were the girl Carlos so Sajan Dennis was saying the Sajala Matu Pata Hakosara. Strategy Tawayana, Akala Kanga, Strategy Tawayana, Tanda Sajan Denima, who was saying the Sajala Matu Pata, don't you Kaze?
Yeah,
you do go in your apology double Chihuahua.
He's in the conversation that so the other than you don't so far. Good to say,
yeah, you can see that Tanda Sajan Denima, who was saying the Sajala Matu Pata, the Damada, they don't the number. Malaysia, So it
is said that when one prostrates in this manner, that all of the particles beneath one's body, from the surface of the ground down to the other realms of sentient beings, every particle of that becomes an accumulation of merit. And this is said to enable one to accumulate the merit, the cause of becoming a Chakravartin, a wheel-turning king.
So then if
one is able to think in this way as one engages in prostration, then that will make the prostration something very beneficial. And so then the next one is the mental prostration. On every atom is found a Buddha, sitting amongst countless Buddha sons. I look with eyes of faith to the victorious ones, thus filling the entire Dharmadhatu.
So this
is telling us, how do we think mentally when we prostrate, right? So this is a mental prostration. So what we're supposed to be thinking in our mind is that on every atom in the space in front of us where we are prostrating, on every atom is found a Buddha, and they are surrounded by the entourage, which is their entourage of bodhisattvas, here given as the Buddha sons. And so to keep that kind of awareness in your mind as you're doing the prostration, that's not something that's so easy. And so in order to be able to understand, in order to really understand how it is possible that there is a Buddha sitting on every atom, as it says in this prayer, you can't come to this understanding solely through the teachings of sutra. We need to understand this as well through the teachings of secret mantra, of Tantra.
전도 파세 좀 가서 너 주지 먹기 때문이야. 니 토로 손지 강가지 토그래서 가서 이 지게 알리라고 말하was.
Yeah. So Geshe said, much less talking about one atom or one particle and all of those being covered with Buddhas. If you were even to say that there were a bunch of Buddhas on the top of his cup, that would be something very difficult to believe. So it's hard to sort of fathom this.
당 알아서 뭐세 토번에 시작하게 되라 다 손지 간에 지나요. 이뭐 이 서대 뭐 지발에 비와레스.
And so what is it related to Tantra that makes this possible? Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that when we speak about a Buddha, when we speak about an enlightened being, their holy body, speech, and mind are of one essence, one nature. There's no separation.
대우는 코로는 리대 요리도 세고 보게 소리하지 빌리지다.
Yeah.
코로스 파지더니 파
And so because also we understand that the body and mind are inseparable in this explanation, that is very important because it means that they travel with thought, totally unencumbered. The Buddha can manifest wherever with being totally unencumbered.
그래서 어떻게 좀 먹게 된다. 대체 때는 내년 수지 세제나 연애 유바지 요아레스 하고 살아.
Yes.
다 대대 치지에노 말리바 살 치지 이사데 뭔가
Yeah.
이마셔 놓고 가자 사티나.
Yeah.
하고 살아. 아니 시기차바래. 너 차바래.
여기 저거래.
the 요아레스.
Yeah.
the 요나
Yeah.
이딘들은 수지 요 주요아레스.
Yes. So it is saying that on every single one of those atoms, I look with eyes of faith to the victorious one, thus filling the entire Dharmadhatu. And Geshe said here, you can understand Dharmadhatu as being like the sky. And if you understand that within the sky, there are these countless atoms, and then every single one is covered by a Buddha, you can understand how the victorious ones, how the enlightened beings fill the extent of the sky, fill the Dharmadhatu.
당니에 내서 가르래서 니티도 손지요 바트 가 이제 가르래서 라바인데 손지 챙거러 와스
당기기 챙기잖아.
또봐 또거러 와스 쳐봐요. 챙기도 와스 아데 손지가 지거러 와스 또 통거러 와스
Yeah.
소화 이제 샘
Ale. Yeah.
샘
Yes.
세레자 샘은 세도 둘려요. 와스 세도 릴레자.
Yeah.
릴레자는 릴레자 와레. 아니 대마레자 와레 지바는 로지.
So Geshe said, how can we understand, for example, that the Buddha can appear just on that little jar of flowers that Geshe was carrying? Because we understand that the Buddha's mind can pervade everything. So the Buddha's mind, the moment it cognizes that flower, at that same moment, the Buddha himself, the Buddha herself can appear there. So the body can appear there. And at the same time, because the speech is also inseparable from the body and mind, then their speech can appear there as well. So that is how the Buddhas can appear anywhere.
하고 서래 셀레 근데는 세대도 논도는 루지 요용화레스 가디나 나로서 기발레스.
Yeah.
하고 서래 나 손지가 세이나 아니 그걸 릴레서 이제 손지가 끌레서 와스. 근데 때 빠진 게 굉장히 내가 때는 뭐
So why is this possible? Because we understand that the mind travels with the wind, right? And that's even the case in ordinary beings, right? The wind is the mount of the mind. But where the Buddha's mind and wind travel, because their body is inseparable from those, the body is also there at the same moment, as is their speech. So this is how they can appear and fill those countless places.
그래서 어다 주티디 예보시바이나 하고 사라지 말아리 파트는 거로 로마 도와줘 리주바도 논돌 통질 로베가라 아니 다 지말하게 다 거로 나자 치모지가 하거냐라
대충바디
아니 다 나자데 메와서 이치다 한 레베 통질 아주라고 지라스 마스 하고 사라와 다라고 큰 중간에 배도 요아레스 지라바레스.
So Geshe wants to tell a story a little bit related to this. And so probably some of you have heard this story before. It's a story of Lord Milarepa and his disciple Rechungpa. So Lord Milarepa's disciple Rechungpa, he was said to be a little bit proud. And Milarepa wanted to do something to help him reduce his pride. So as Milarepa and Rechungpa were traveling together, they came to a vast plain. And on that vast plain, there was like a hollow horn of like a cow or a sheep. And Milarepa instructed Rechungpa, please pick up that horn. This is something that's going to be useful.
Oh, that is because something I don't know that Nipandamara Momochira, and I don't give it to the Amares of Chicoria.
And so the pride that Rechungpa had in this Kojakala Drunyurwa. Yeah. And so the pride that Rechungpa had was he thought, I have been to India and I've received all of these transmissions and have like the corresponding powers and realizations. And, maybe even my teacher doesn't have those same qualities as I do. So he had this kind of pride in his mind.
That thing I just call it up to Pasha, Jimala, nothing I just was on Matu, on Tony. Then you are Rago too much Chimbochil.
Yeah.
And it tomboy Rago was.
Yeah.
That I got the Cunningham and Pedro Yares, oh, Minga Lama telling my in Chico. That's a lucky
So how this happened is that Milarepa, right, he possessed some cities, some powers, and he understood that the pride that was in Rechungpa's mind, this is what was actually blocking his realization. This was what was blocking him from the next step. And so Milarepa wanted to help Rechungpa clear away that obstacle of pride so that he could progress. But that's not how Rechungpa saw it. When they came to this vast plain and Milarepa told them to pick up this horn, he actually had the thought like, previously, my master had no interest in ordinary things, and now he's like accumulating possessions. So as they were traversing the plain, some bad weather came in, and there was a terrible hailstorm that manifested. And then at a certain point, Rechungpa lost sight of Milarepa, and he was like, where did the Lama go? I lost him. And actually, it turned out that Milarepa had shrunk and was inside this horn. And inside the horn, he was very kind of comfortable, while Rechungpa was still afflicted by the hailstorm. But the weird thing was that to Rechungpa, as it manifested, it didn't appear as if either the horn got bigger or the Lama got smaller. It was almost unfathomable. And not only was Milarepa inside the horn, but he was sitting comfortably within the horn with kind of lots of space around him. And so Rechungpa thought, well, I should enter the horn also, but of course, like even his head was too big to fit inside the horn, so he could not join his teacher. Yeah. Yeah, and so Milarepa said, if your understanding, if your realization is the same as mine, then come join me in here where it's warm. And through that lesson, actually, Milarepa was able to get rid of that obstacle of pride within Rechungpa. So Geshe said this is also a little bit related. There's no encumbrance of size and so forth, right? The Buddha, along with a retinue of bodhisattvas, can appear even on the surface of an atom.
Yes,
yeah, and so just reading through this again, on every atom is found a Buddha sitting amongst countless Buddha sons. I look with eyes of faith to the victorious ones, thus filling the entire Dharma Dhatu. Yeah. So Geshe said actually this principle about the Buddhas manifesting in this way, this is a debate topic for them when they debate pramana, when they debate valid cognition. And Geshe said one of the debates they have is can one elephant sit on a blade of grass? Can 10 elephants sit on a blade of grass? And can 100 elephants sit on a blade of grass? So the next one is prostrating with speech. So of these with endless oceans of excellence, endowed with an ocean of wondrous speech, I sing praises to the greatness of all Buddhas, a eulogy to those gone to bliss. So this is offering with our speech a praise to the qualities of all of the Buddhas of 3 times and so forth. I prostrate with my speech. So oceans of excellence means I also offer verbal prostration to their limitless ocean-like positive qualities. And so Geshe said also, endowed with an ocean of wondrous speech, we verbally prostrate to the qualities of speech that the Buddhas possess. One enumeration is that the quality of the speech of the enlightened ones has 60 aspects to the quality of the speech of the enlightened ones. So Geshe said the nice thing about prostrating in this way, along with this prayer, is that through prostrating with our body, we are able to not only accumulate merit, but also purify any negativities, obscurations through unwholesome conduct of the body. When we prostrate mentally, we are able to purify negativities and obscurations accumulated through our mind, through our thoughts. And when we prostrate with our speech, we are able to clear away any negativities accumulated through the speech. And so in this way, right, we can purify those negativities of the 10 non-virtues related to body, speech, and mind. Yeah. Yes. And in terms of prostration, what is it the antidote to? When we think about the afflictions, we think about the 6 root afflictions. Within these 6 afflictions is pride. So prostration is the antidote to pride or haughtiness. Yeah. So a very powerful person who's very prideful, they'll think like, I don't need to respect anybody, right? They kind of have that attitude of superiority towards all. And so when one has an attitude like that, that actually hinders one being able to look at oneself enough to bring forth new positive mental qualities. So pride is a real hindrance in that way. Yes. So it is said that on the mountain of pride, positive qualities cannot manifest, just as grass cannot grow on a steep precipice. This is like a well-known Tibetan proverb. So Geshe said, in this way we have completed the branch of prostration. And so Geshe said we covered it briefly, not in a vast way. So Geshe said we will set aside then the king of prayers for the moment, and we will turn our attention to in praise of dependent arising, or in praise of dependent origination. Oops. So Geshe said last time we covered the first verse, he believes. So it begins with Namo Guru Manju Goshaya. I pay homage to Lama Manju Gosha. So that's Manjushri. And then the first verse, he who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conqueror, who saw dependent origination and taught it. Yeah. So Lama Tsongkhapa is offering prostration to Buddha Shakyamuni here. Why is he offering prostration to Buddha Shakyamuni here? Because the Buddha was able to teach dependent origination, which allows one to be able to eliminate samsara, cyclic existence, as well as its causes. So unexcelled, the teacher unexcelled means that there are no others who can match him in terms of a knower, in particular in terms of a knower and teacher of Tenjung Sodirwa, dependent origination. Younger Sonam? Zubasum. Oh. Yeah. And not only did the Buddha realize that dependent arising within his own mind, but out of his compassion wishing to benefit sentient beings, he also taught it. So he saw it and he taught it. So you are unexcelled in terms of being a knower, and in addition to this, you taught dependent arising, and for this reason, I offer prostration to you. Verse number 2, whatever degenerations there are in the world, the root of all these is ignorance. You taught that it is dependent origination, the seeing of which will undo this ignorance. And so what is this saying? Whatever degenerations there are in the world, sometimes people say whatever problems there are in the world. It's also translated that way. What is the cause of these? The cause of these is karma and affliction. Out of these, mainly affliction, and not mainly the affliction of anger or something else, but it is mainly the affliction of ignorance. So if one wants to be able to get rid of those problems, one needs to be able to get rid of the ignorance grasping at the self. If one wants to be able to get rid of this ignorance grasping at the self, one needs to rely upon dependent origination or dependent arising. And so Geshe said that so Geshe said another thing that is, it might not be stated explicitly, but it is implicit in this verse. It is the relationship of emptiness and dependent arising. So the Buddha was able to show how when one brings forth emptiness, this acts as an assisting factor to the understanding of dependent origination. Similarly, when one is focusing on dependent origination, that understanding reinforces that understanding of emptiness. So kind of seeing that relationship, the Buddha seeing that relationship and explaining it, I offer prostration for that. So once we have this realization regarding oneself that I am empty of existing inherently, then seeing how I also arise dependently, how I am a dependent arising, this understanding can dawn within the mind. Similarly, when I see that I arise dependently, that I am a dependent arising, that also helps me see how I am empty of existing inherently, empty of existing from my own side. Not only can this understanding, when brought forth, help me clear away attachment, anger, and so forth, it can also help me to uproot the ignorance grasping at the self. So therefore, I offer prostration to one who taught that. So what else can we understand really important from this verse and from dependent arising generally? We can understand that any phenomena that exists, any existent phenomena necessarily arises in dependence upon something, in dependence upon other factors. This is very important. Yeah. And once we are able to see that any phenomena, whatever exists, how it exists, is necessarily dependent upon other factors, that it exists dependently, this naturally also leads us to the understanding of how it is empty of inherent self-existence. Yeah. So that's a really important understanding to have, that in terms of any phenomena, or we could say anything, the way that it exists, it necessarily arises in dependence upon other factors. This is a really powerful understanding. So Geshe said also there is the dependent arising of dependent relationships, right? Like we designate good on the basis of understanding bad. We designate bad on the basis of understanding good, right? They actually, in a way, arise in dependence upon each other. So if we say something is big or small, right, we also can't say it's big or small from its own side, right? Something is a big in dependence upon comparison to other objects that are smaller. Something is small in comparison to other things that are bigger. Yeah. And because these arise in dependence on the basis of something else, this means that they lack inherent self-existence. So these afflictions of attachment, anger, and so forth, any object that is appearing to them, they don't see that it is something that is arising dependently. They think that it is arising as inherently existent. It is arising from its own side. And it is connected with that verse that in the 400 Aryadeva says, so this is verse 135, as the tactile sense pervades the body, confusion is present in them all. By overcoming confusion, one will also overcome all disturbing attitude. Luda luwang jijintu, right? Yeah.
미국 버스는 미지보라 마도 나도 되지는 거 작으면 돼 와스.
So why do we say tactile sense? So Geshe said, because when we speak of the different sense faculties, if we speak of the eye sense faculty, right, it is only that one part of the body, the eye, where that sense faculty pervades.
다 리치 온보서 미국 나이 온보 제 온보 리치 차솔을 온보 차는 거.
But the tactile sense, right, because it covers the whole body, it necessarily pervades all of the other sense doors as well, right? The eyes for sights, the nose for smells, and so forth.
그래서 어다 된 무지 뺄된 무지 당하로서 컨트롤 단위 뭐 잡아고야 쇼바고 대 기본 요래전에 대대바이나 그 컨트롤 기본에 내 도그를 맞던 내 차도 당하죠 근데 내 도에서라요 말이지.
Similarly, when we meditate, for example, on patience, patience acts as the antidote only to anger. Patience will not act directly as an antidote to like pride, attachment, and so forth.
Yes, 다 델리 하고 살아와 나도 말이 받들 걸어 보게 된주고 돈에 된데고 돈에 내가 때도 봐이나. 다 강가를 걸어 내가 보고 있어.
However, if based upon our understanding of dependent origination, of dependent arising, we are able to directly target the ignorance grasping at the self, this will all diminish all of the other afflictions, because the ignorance grasping at the self is like that tactile sense that pervades the whole body. It pervades all the other afflictions.
저는 아마서 쓰고요. 된다 원도스. 난도 대책이요 말했어. 난도 인편에 이미서 잡아도서 티바스 야기 되나? 니까지를 뒤에 파지 오자 내는 내가 대책이요 말했어. 그래서 요 잡아 이바스 도서나. 오이님들 그러봤어.
So Geshe said that the lamas say that our current way of dealing with things, it's like if we have a leaky roof, right? And there's a drip that's coming through our roof. Where that drip is falling, we might move away the cushions or the carpet or put a pan or something to collect the water, right? But then a drip in the other part of the house is also going to let water in. So we haven't solved the problem.
This one, 다 땡주가 내가 되게 이 돈을 바꿔야 그 내가 되겠으나 아니 잡아지만 니마까지 돈을 갖고 안 올라왔어.
So this wisdom of dependent arising, Geshe said, it's like replacing the roof on your whole house. So by replacing the roof, you're sure that once you clear one space, there's not going to be a leak that arises somewhere else. It addresses the whole problem.
다시 또 아직 다 내가 저희 연구소설한 연구 때 같이 보도록 왔어. 다 대리 좀 같이 해줘 돼. 인류도 다 로지지 매바도 다 동반인 걸 보았으나 강가를 보게 never to
So while the antidotes to these specific afflictions, right, such as patience, generosity, and so forth are important, those are very important. The most important thing is this understanding of dependent arising, and also this understanding of lack of inherent existence, this understanding of emptiness, because that benefits everything. So Geshe said there are also many other many different types of dependent origination or dependent arising, right? But we will come to those as we go through the text. One thing that Geshe wanted to explain is how emptiness acts as the assisting factor of dependent arising, and dependent arising acts as the assisting factor of emptiness. This is because
So she was just a career salava in she carrying a coro yayate, yechila yaita, or te have days a hakosuna, the put in the water.
If we understand that whatever phenomena is appearing, that it arises in dependence upon something else, that understanding also helps us understand emptiness, that lack of inherent existence.
This one,
because if something is independently existent, inherently existent, truly existent, it has to arise in and of itself. It has to rise in and of itself. It can't be arising from other factors if it exists from its own side.
그래서 어떤 아주 칸이 시야도 다 되냐 레지 리라고도 된 소화가 리라고면 되고
So Geshe said to speak these principles from one's mouth, that's a little bit of an easy thing to do. But to really have like a heartfelt appreciation of these principles, this is something that's a little more difficult.
더 아쉬워 된 내자도 control 열 따스 대 존노 도나 뭐 리라고지로 해야지 된대 요아레스 미여들 따그들 예데 소소가 파서 막 이거 로지치 저거나 식다가 이나 이기바지 동게데 도움을 좋아스.
One of the really good exercises is actually to do when we have an object that makes us feel attached or when we have an object that makes us feel angry. We see that that object through the lens of attachment, its qualities are exaggerated, right? But if the object was inherently existent, everyone would see that person or that object in the same way, right? Everybody would be attached to it or everybody would be averse to it. But this is not the case.
소소 무가사도 뭐지 요아 무지 요나 댕기네 로지지 무가와도 비자도 로지지 저네요나 세이나 때도 그 코를 두고 고다진데 못하지.
So Geshe said, think about that person you really dislike, that person that you really have difficulty with. If they really existed inherently, every single other person that difficult person encountered would dislike them. But despite the fact that you dislike them so much, they have a lot of friends, right? There are a lot of people who like that person. This shows that they do not exist inherently in the way they appear. So this helps us understand what we mean by if something is inherently existent. If something is inherently existent, right, it has to exist from its own side. And it has to be unchanging, stable, if it's inherently existent. So Geshe said that concludes our brief presentation for today. So we will have question and answer afterwards. As usual, I always remind people, if you need to go on about your day, please do so after the dedication. But if you want to hang around for questions, also feel free. So with a happy mind, then let us dedicate the merits. Like, finally, Kendrick's laughing. Jangchu Samcho Rinpoche Moje Panon Chejurji Cheba Nyamba Meba Yong Gone Gondo Pewar Sho Tomni Tawa Rinpoche Moje Panam Chejurji Cheba Nyamba Meba Yong Gone Gondo Pewar Sho 37. Jumbo Pao Jeda Jemba Dong Gundu Sambo Deon Dejinde Deda Gungi Jesu Daloche Gewa Dida Tongje Radungo Dusun Shebe Gyawa Tongje Ngowa Gangla Chodo Ngapade Dagi Gewe Tsawa Digo Kyang Zambo Cheche Radungo Because all of the difficulties and problems arise due to evil minds, then through our merits, may beings be able to give rise to wholesome thoughts and qualities as described in the text. We look at the world today and we see the wars and conflicts, the pandemics, and so forth. For the merits that we've accumulated, may these all be completely pacified. We see all of the other difficulties and sufferings that all different types of sentient beings endure. Through the merits that we've accumulated, may all of these sufferings be cleared away completely, and may the sun of happiness shine with equality upon all sentient beings. So we'll pause there. I'll just turn the volume up. We welcome any questions that folks may have.
Paul, are you able to ask your question, or should I read it out from the chat?
I don't mind asking the question.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, great. My first question, can you talk more about the neutral mind? Is this the original mind or Buddha mind? And how to eliminate the negative samskara obstacles to appreciate the neutral mind? Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. The nganzo di tambo di nganzo di sem di lungmaten chigyeres. Sem di lungmaten sena kande chigyere di nyukme sem rebes. Di nganzo di sem ngene di rebes. Ane ngaronso di sem lungmaten gi sem di sharyala. Dene dinso gi kandes lagore. Barche dinso jima kandes mepasogo gire dusa.
That you may say Jibolaga Maris, you may say Koroichi to Lumateres.
Yeah, so sorry, sorry, I forgot the second part of your question, Paul. So just have to know. Ane yang di sangegi sem di lang yang lumateres konso sem ni podi. Yeah.
Yeah, that is Sunjisena Kanga Gawarema to Lumatemus.
So just to answer the first part of the question, Paul, in the case of a Buddha, we don't speak about like their mind or their fundamental mind being neutral at all. Everything is considered to be virtuous when we speak of a Buddha. So of course there's no unwholesome minds in a Buddha, non-virtuous minds. Of course that's, without question, but also there is the Buddha's mind is not neutral either. It is completely virtuous actually. Yeah. Ale, sorry, nanso di sem trakpodi.
Tramo message you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's saying on the page to say you are.
Yeah, so when we speak about the fundamental mind, this mind is neutral. But also if we're to speak on the coarser level about the mental consciousness, in its bare state, it is also neutral.
Lama Tonga Besubare, Magay is Lumatic says and a Candice Jagare, the Lava Inas, get to Magay, Yanja to Gigilan and Jewish Lumatic said that was on Gay Setola Conyo the Detoga.
Yeah.
Magay Setola Conyo the Detoki, the Nitsan says, yeah, Lumatic says.
So Lama Tsongkhapa actually explains how it is that we can posit that the mind is fundamentally neutral. And the reason is the mind can abide together with a wholesome thought. The mind can also abide together with an unwholesome thought. This shows us that that base of the mind, its fundamental character, is neutral.
Lumatic says and another Maha Karseka.
How can we also say that the fundamental mind is neutral? If a good person, a wholesome person, comes under the influence of someone who is negative, we can see somebody who was formerly good become completely negative. We can also see a negative person, if they're lucky enough to meet somebody who is wise and wholesome, they can also be led in a wholesome direction. This is another kind of reasoning that's given for why the mind is neutral in character.
That's an almost almost to be
Yeah. So it's also said like if you're too good, and I think here is in the sense of naively good, right? If you're naively good, it actually makes you very vulnerable to falling under the influence of somebody negative in a way. Yeah.
다 된다 아주 류마틱 세세나
Yeah.
또 대당이
Yeah.
라이야.
So this shows how that mind can be posited as neutral. And lungma tengine so sharia roa kandeslagore jima den so the parshaya kandesogosa.
다 정말 대지도 거로 그세 거로 오지래요. 와스 로고 그래. 그때나 오지래요. 세 거로.
So in terms of, I think, Paul, you said the samskaras, or just maybe to use a word that everyone can understand when we speak about the stains, whatever's obscuring that fundamental kind of clarity and neutral nature of the mind, we understand that these stains are adventitious. That means that they are not part and parcel of the mind. They are something that can be removed.
하고서
하고서.
다시 이나요 다세 코로 som바도 니게 말했더니 코 땡보지 있자 som바도 니게 레서 코로도 차차차 다 레비 제 도로 도마.
Yes. And so love and compassion, right? So when we speak of positive qualities, love and compassion, they might not necessarily be part of the mind either, but because love and compassion are positive qualities based on reason, when we bring them forth in the neutral ground of the mind, they are something that will get stronger and stronger.
하고서 뭐다 알다 같이 좀 류마틱 세세는 안 되래. 내세이나 무게 세도 디세 길 권는데 대도 말아와스. 무게 세는 게 세도 디세 길 대도 말이다. 류마틱 말이야.
So Geshe said that just to go back to the sort of main part of Paul's question, which is about the mind being something that is neutral in character, we can see that a wholesome and unwholesome thought cannot abide at the same moment, but both a wholesome thought and an unwholesome thought can arise on that same ground of the mind. So this is the reasoning that shows that the basic nature of the mind is something that is neutral. Yes. Yeah. So hopefully, Paul, that helps you with the explanation.
Yes.
Did it answer your question, Paul?
Oh, Paul, you're on mute.
Oh, he's muted.
Yes, it did. Thank you. It gave great clarity to that question, to the question. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Any other questions?
We have a question from Alan. Alan, do you want to ask? Go ahead, or shall I read it? Maybe I'll read it. Yeah, okay. So question is, we speak about existence due to cause and condition. Is there a teaching or theory about, so to say, first cause, about how everything started? Thank you for your answer. I hope it's not too complicated.
No. It's, I mean, I think the answer is going to be complicated, but the question is very clear, and it's an interesting question. Nanso yupa kare yena gyudang kien latene chungwares chik lagire duas. Ine yupa denso gyu tambo chik yores kecha yorides. Gyu tambo chik. We can't speak of a first cause because we can't posit a definite tomamandus tamamandus. We can't posit a definite beginning and end to things. So when we speak of the self and when we speak of the mind in particular, we can see through our experience that we can't speak of a definite beginning or a definite end of those, right? They're like continuums. So that doesn't mean that that we call the self and that we call my mind don't have causes at all, right? Certainly they do have causes, and there's extensive discussion about that. But if you were to try to posit a very first cause of those, you probably would have some trouble. But if we speak of that being who has achieved liberation, what was the first cause that contributed to their liberation? If we speak about that being who is a bodhisattva, what was the first cause that led to their state of a bodhisattva? You might be able to posit a first cause.
좋아.
Mhm.
그래 맞던 디지털 저 동반들에 세계적으로 말 그래서 도마야 거라 전에 도마는 문제 담아는 문제 왔어.
But in terms of compounded phenomena, they are always like arising and falling away in samsara within a continuous cycle. So if you wanted to posit a first cause to something, that would be very difficult.
이래 요용하래. 얘네가 저도 레지체체 전에 같이 이보 강가를 와.
And so actually Geshe said that even right away, you know, there's not one cause, right? Because you talk about the substantial cause and the auxiliary causes of each phenomena. So they're already right away, you're talking about multiple things. So to posit one would be quite difficult.
하고서 선 저것저거 이나에 이래 요용하래. 얘네가 저래가 레지체체 저래가.
So anything that you point to, right, it has that substantial cause as well as the subsidiary cause, right? So right away, there's like a multiplicity. Yeah. So hopefully, if not a full answer, that gave you the beginning of an answer. So when I just want to clarify, because I think maybe some of these terms are
나로서 나도 나도 있을 도마만데 담아만데 그래서 대도 제가지 이나요 나도 그야 가르래 달아봐이나 나로서 코알아 도마만데 때리나 담아도 와 내가도 그야 되네.
So Geshe wants to clarify also one important thing. We said that when we talk about the self and that we talk about as my mind, we say that they have no beginning and they have no end. But it's important to understand that samsara, cyclic existence, is beginningless, but there is also an end to it. And that end is actually what we are striving to achieve. And sorry, I just wanted to make a vocabulary point, because I was thinking when I say compounded phenomena, that means phenomena that arises from causes, just in case folks are unfamiliar. Similarly, we posit the mind as tama. So we posit the mind as being beginningless and endless, but those adventitious afflictions that we mentioned, those stains that we mentioned, they are beginningless, but they also have an end, and that end is what we are striving to.
나도 말이 비게 담아 가진 것 중에 또 얘기해서도 또 무슨 담은 것 중에서는 또 받으시라고 했더니 제만 노래 들으시 말했어.
So ignorance grasping at the self has no beginning, but it has an end. Where is the end of that self-grasping ignorance? That end is found in the direct realization of emptiness, as declared by Chandrakirti in his, not Chandrakirti, as declared by Dharmakirti, my apologies, Dharmakirti in his text on Pramana. And at that point, it's actually like a seed that has been scorched by fire and is not able to bring about a sprout. So thank you so much. Any other questions?
Hey there. Yeah, I have one. And
go ahead.
I want to preface this by saying I mean this with the deepest respect. I want to ask a question that's been on my mind ever since I started studying Buddhism, and it has to do with meat consumption. So in the Geluk and Tibetan cultural context, what is the relationship between ahimsa, or to refrain from killing or non-harming, and the consumption of animal-based foods? I often feel as though I'm not fully practicing ahimsa since I still eat fish and eggs, but I'm interested in how you deal with or how you square the idea of eating animal-based foods with non-harming. So whoever asked the question, if you don't mind muting yourself again, because I think what's happening is I'm talking to you and your computer speaker is relaying that back. So we're like, it's not,
Okay, yeah, it's not an offensive question at all. I think it's an important one. Not so, I just like get to it. So I talk too much. So meat consumption. Nanso di sha saya di roa. Nanso kandes lau gure. Ne pas kill chogio mares chik yore roa. Ane perna da sewa mepa gitawa chik yores roa. Di na nanso di sha kandes lau yores perna di gelu inamula roa sha sagin mambo yores nanso di sha dang kandes lau gure. Semshen gi chepa denso perna oma dang chura denso di semshen gi dunya dang rewa yores roa. Ane nanso sewa mepa gi tawa dang sha nyamdu saya kandes chik sogos roa. Ko dopa yore karinsena sha sagyo marine ko samsam nya dang oma tungi yores dene chichana di sewa pet pangya yomare samsonsa.
다들 데모레 시도 데모로 와서 이내 전에 저거 보는 저와 지야 제도 지부터 강가 열어 강가 보고 가게 가시도 같이 보래 했어.
So Geshe said, absolutely, there's a reason for this question, because when we say we want to abandon harmfulness, we want to abandon like the main harmfulness of directly harming things, but also all of the branches of things that we may be doing that may be somehow contributing to harm. So yes, I mean, ideally, this is very important.
다 리지게 못어서나요. 다 사케지게 때가 못어네 된다. 다 그럭자로는 고시원을 고사쇼로 여러was.
Yeah. So there's one type of person though who perhaps they're not able to completely, and let's just say meat, but animal products, I mean, you know, just even putting that aside, even just meat, because of their habits or because of their like cultural situation or whatever, they're not able to just kind of set meat aside. And in this way, Geshe said it's almost, you could almost so you have to look at the situation of the individual person. If it's a situation of they're just addicted to meat and like it's a habit for them, and because of that, they're not able to set it aside, then this would be a different matter from someone who has maybe grown up in a particular place and their body is used to meat. And so if they stop their meat consumption, there might be some difficulties for their health. So you have to differentiate between those situations. Yeah, yeah. So Geshe said that these things are very important, but if there's going to be some sort of ill impact on one's health, one has to consider that. Why is this the case? And this is actually, this person opened up a whole can of worms. So if people have other questions after this, then please ask. So Geshe said that, you know, but mainly harmfulness as it is abandoned is an internal thing. It's actually a mind that we are trying to abandon. So that is something to understand here. Yes. So Geshe said that, of course, we should abandon meat, actually. Like, that's kind of like even just like a logical thing. But if you're in a situation where temporarily your body or something cannot handle that, because you also have to maintain your internal practices, like abandoning harmfulness on the mental level, you need to take care of your body. So that's a consideration for some folks. So Geshe doesn't want to judge those folks. Yeah, Gisela. So hopefully that touched on your question. Just in case, just in case people are wondering, we're both vegetarian, if people are wondering.
That was my next question. Yes, you said vegetarian. So do you still drink milk and eat eggs, things like that?
Not very often, but sometimes, yeah. Yeah. I don't generally keep eggs in the house or milk, but yeah, no, sometimes we do have dairy products, sure.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome.
But
Geshe said, like, as far as an ideal, yes, like if we could all strive to that ideal, that's a very good thing. Absolutely.
But the mind of non-harming, you're saying, is if you have to rank mind versus action, then obviously we want our actions to be in line with our principles, but like you say, if you don't have any alternatives but meat, but you have a mind of non-harming and you give thanks for the meat, then maybe this isn't 100% ideal, but it's still following the precepts to some extent.
Yeah, nganzo di kandeslaw kare, nganzo di chawadang semgi nangla so semdi re dua sepa pangya res rwa ine chirtang nganzo di tawadang chupa tumpa yena yaga re duas ine nganzo tuna nganzo tap mena rwa pet pang matubna semgi nangla kandeslaw kare sewa di katsu de pangtubna yaga re duis dabochi. Yes. So that's correct. And Geshe said absolutely, like the practice on the mental level and also the application and the actions, like, you know, we do want to get to a point where those are coming together. Absolutely. Yeah. And Geshe said one of the things that makes him really happy is that he sees, like, with the young people, there's a lot of young people who from a very young age, they choose not to eat meat, right? So there really seems to be a movement in society of kind of young people who are avoiding that. Yeah, and Geshe said, like, every kind of society that he's looked at, if you compare it to before, people are at least eating less meat, and there are more and more people that aren't eating it. So it's in a good direction. Yeah. So in the monasteries, for example, because we know the climate in Tibet, right? So we have to also understand these things are a form of climate. But in the monasteries, the Tibetan monasteries in India, Geshe said, it's actually been many years since they stopped serving meat through the monastery and at any public function. However, there may be a couple of people who their bodies maybe weren't well or something, and so they prepare something in their own home. But in terms of what the monastery serves to the monks, it's all vegetarian, and it has been for a long time. Yeah. And Geshe also saying, like, in Tibetan society, there was a lot of people who were kind of from animal rights organizations that had like movies and things about how animals are treated when they're killed for meat. And kind of based on that, there's also a lot of younger people who have stopped eating meat. Yeah. So Geshe said also, if one is eating the meat, there is a difference between eating it sort of mindlessly without any bad feeling or regret about the animal that gave up its life, and eating it with awareness and feeling some regret that an animal lost its life and maybe making prayers for that animal. So there's also a difference in that regard. Decent. So hopefully, sir, that answered your question at least partly. I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Oh, it's Michael. Thank you very much. Yeah, that question has been on my mind for years. So you really helped give me some clarity. Thank you. Yes, you're very welcome. And Michael, Geshe said he's pleased that you raised this because it's an important question. Any other questions? So Geshe said it looks like there are no other questions.
I have a question.
Oh yes, go ahead. Yes, go for it.
Okay, it's back to the conversation we're having before meat about causes and conditions, you know, and emptiness and things like that. Question is time relative? And if so, what's its relationship to causes and conditions?
Good question. I think that's Deki Lee. So yeah, no, that's an interesting question. Tutsu di chikla tene chungores, tutsu dang gyudang kien rewa kandesh chikures. No, so tutsu di rewa mahomba tanda. Di gyudang kien rewa kandesh chikures. Yeah.
Pena dise ina yo. Beg dise roto jin duas.
Yeah.
Sepal ta ina.
Yeah.
오지 대인지 사람한테 걸어서 누마서서 다도 지요하와
Ale.
대오
Some teachers,
누마서서
yeah.
누마서서 그때는 걔한테도 제 뭐뭐지라더니 다바와
So causes and conditions in terms of time, Geshe said that you can see that time is a dependent designation because if you look at the calendar that Tibetans are using and the month that they are in and so forth, this is very different than the Western calendar, which shows you that time is something that is merely designated. So that is one thing to think about.
그게
Listen,
그래서
Jisung.
다 커서는 디테일을 되게 좋아.
Was your question related to that, Deki Lee, or I think Geshe wants some clarification from you?
I think we were talking about emptiness being dependent on causes and conditions.
Okay.
So the question is, everything that has to do with causes and conditions has to do with time. Like something happened before something else. So
Oh,
saying
okay.
causes and conditions and time are all in the relative realm versus ultimate.
Okay. That's a good place to start. And then Shirtang Dutsu Seria di Dundam Dempare Kunzob Dempares.
그것도 되는.
So time is a relative truth, Deki Lee. And now I'll ask the next part of your question.
야 디세 걸어요 그것도 된바래 디피티 마고비티 다다이티 가르자바이나 미탄 들라나 그것도 돼.
So when we speak of the present time, when we speak about the past, when we speak about what is coming in the future, these are all considered to be relative or conventional truth. Ine nganso di tompani seria de rua di gyudam kienla tene taksare dua karinsena arangjingi mepa yomares gyudam kienla tene chungi yores. Rua ine nganso di tutsu samlo tangna gyudam kien chatsangwa tutsu chikyore karinsena sharia gi tutsu yore nubia gi tutsu
동만이
yore.
걸어 제도 지을라 때는 중간에 사실을 말하는 거스.
Loso.
그래서 동만이 걸어 나가 놓지 가디나 걸어다가 그래 마도.
So we wouldn't necessarily say that emptiness arises because of causes and conditions. Emptiness is something that is always present, and we can think that as being physical, like an empty space of the sky, for example.
그래서 나로서 그 세계 동만이 있잖아. 손재가 세계 동만이 있잖아.
Yeah.
제도 지을라 원래 와요.
But when we speak about the emptiness of our mind, nanso sengi tombani dang sange sengi
손재
tombani.
세계 동만이 달라와이나.
Yeah.
어제도 야 지을라 띠띠띠바래.
When we speak of the emptiness of our mind, right, a specific object, when we speak about the emptiness of a Buddha's mind, the emptiness of a specific object, that is connected with causes and conditions.
그래서 맞죠 동만이 달라와인 제도 지을 띠세나 때도 말았어.
If you're just speaking of emptiness without specifying the emptiness of something, it would be difficult to say that that arises from causes and conditions. I have a question back about that. Ine tompani de rua rangjingi mepala tene chungi yores. Di rangjingi mepala tene chungi yotsang. So I was asking Geshe, what about the relation between emptiness and inherent existence? Because it's the lack of inherent existence that is emptiness. So could you say that the emptiness of inherent existence is the cause of emptiness? And Geshe said, no, you also could not say that. Emptiness is posited dependently upon a lack of inherent existence, is how you would have to say it. It's parsing words, but that's how you'd have to say it. And the dutsudi chatsangwa chungiyores nuptrogiyores ruayine di kunzo. So, but Geshe says time, even though everything has a time in terms of arising in the beginning and falling away near the end, time is still a relative truth. Yeah. Yeah, 하고선.
아까 디세 걸어 동반이 돼. 디세 걸어 이제서나.
Yeah.
그 걸어 동반이 더 우리가 맨로 마도 거. 세계에서 빼는 가서 뭐 어떻게 동반이 달라와이나. 뭐 걸어 매서는 걸어 동반이 더 주자 맨.
So Geshe said, when we speak about the emptiness of the mug, this relates to the point of view of time. At the time when that mug is smashed or when it disintegrates, the emptiness of that mug ceases to exist, the emptiness of that particular object. In this way, you could say emptiness and time are connected.
그것을 이나 이거 또 기도만이 돼 매봐줘야 지도 계속
Yes, yeah.
그런 매서이다 도만이 돼 저저 매.
But let's just be clear, the emptiness of the cup didn't end because emptiness ended. The emptiness of the cup ended because that object met the end of its life.
그것은 도만이 거다 답이 좋았어.
Yes, and actually that's why in many of the teachings on emptiness, it speaks of emptiness as a permanent phenomenon, actually.
어떤 데 되는 나오야. 내가 개발 뭐 그랬더니 가서 빈보대.
Yeah.
뭐다 말해. 나세한테 답하래. 그래서 장이야. 지금.
Yeah, and so Geshe said, there's many things that come in relation to this. In many Indian schools of thought, they say that the aggregates, so in particular, like the form aggregate, like our body, these are impermanent, but the I or the self is permanent, right? You have this concept of the Atman or soul.
그래서 어떻게 좀 뭐야.
Yes, so Geshe said, actually, we have to come to a further discussion of this point, but Dekili, hopefully it gave you a bit of a beginning of an answer.
Yeah, I can see now how the ultimate and the relative cannot be without each other, except for maybe emptiness.
Yes, yeah. Dundam dang kunso nyamdu yogeres roa dundam kunso plateni chungires kunso dundam lateni chungires mateni yoche. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
야생아지가 디나요.
Yes.
아이는 나도 동을 어디라.
Yeah.
도만이가 셋째지대 반 로비 가라.
Yeah.
그저 도도이라 말해. 그래서 매번 말해 되대.
So Geshe said there, it's kind of like when we posit how things really are, it's like there's that 50% of the relative and the 50% of the ultimate. Now, Geshe said when we are kind of in meditative equipoise on emptiness, on ultimate truth, at that moment, the mind is completely engaged with the ultimate, 100% of the mind. But that doesn't mean that the relative stops, right? The relative is still going.
군다. 아직은 오케서 고도 같이 이제 노시가 들었어.
Alelos.
야세 잘해 지바레스 코로니.
So Geshe says even 50-50 is a bit misleading because it's like the relative is 100% like valid at the same time that the ultimate is 100% valid.
하고서는 다 이나 나도 제거 깔래니까 될 보게 소요 토요 하네스.
Correct.
제거.
correct.
요즘 많이 그도 되더니까.
Yeah.
there's a big
And also Geshe said that when we talked about single-pointed meditation on emptiness, on ultimate truth, and we can't do relative truth at the same time, this is true during placement meditation. But when we're doing analytical meditation, right, meditation on a more intellectual level, then we can actually be contemplating both relative and ultimate truth.
그래서 다 돈만이 그게 저하다 어때뭐 체마도 맞을 뭐 말레베 얘라 그저 휴치가 됐어 노아가 디나 메도라고 지나 그저 때문에 노아 휴치가 나
메토기 동반이.
yeah.
So when you're contemplating emptiness, before you have the valid cognition of emptiness, if you were to talk about the emptiness of the flower,
그저 노아
the appearance of relative truth will be stronger than the appearance of ultimate truth.
하고서는 다 거비야잖아요. 내 말에서 갈래 답소노 돈에로는 생인의 버림 저수나 매도 그 뚱반이 돼 마도 매도 니까지 셀 샤도가 나마.
But as one goes through the reasonings and one thinks about how the flower does not exist on its own side, how it's arising dependently, and as one meditates more and more and more and more, one comes to the point where there's a shift and the mind is focused on the flower's emptiness, on the emptiness, and not on the flower.
하고서는 다대 그저 매너를 말해서 그도 요아로스 이나 소소 세게 니밤 되지 마도 매이다.
Yeah. Does that mean that the relative existence or the relative truth of the flower stops? No, it doesn't. It just means that when the mind is completely engaged with the emptiness of the flower, it can only do relative or ultimate truth either or. It can't do them both at the same time. So it's completely focused on the ultimate mode of abiding of that flower.
다들 일하고 되어 말했어. 배는 안 주고 매도 뚜만이 너무 또 비체만 레비가라.
Yeah.
하고서 근데 체만 뒤가 매도 전에 또 도요 말했어.
When we have the first valid cognition of the emptiness of the flower, it's only the emptiness that is dawning in the mind as that valid cognition emerges. We can't also be focusing on the flower at the same time. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the flower becomes nothing or stops existing.
다 니까 또다 디세 나도 따와 노지 메도 따와 노지 또 도케데 또 많이 노도 또 도케데 손지레.
The only being that is said to be able to simultaneously hold the complete relative existence of the flower as well as its ultimate mode of abiding in one moment at simultaneously is said to be a fully enlightened Buddha.
아그송 다텔리라 버디 문도 아스 얘는 인간적 빼는 나서 아tin 거 tum바니 때는 소모토네 되나 자네 라야만 자네 라야마가 소모토네 가가 파시네 되나 there's a 근데 저요 아레스.
So Geshe said that, but you know, so that's something that is difficult. 나서 나세 디 상황.
나자 그래서 지금 저요 말에 되시오 말에 파시네 도서나 tum바지 거 마도 도서 나로 하고 아레스. 야 나서 품보요 말에 저요 말에 되게 파시나.
So when we go through, for example, thinking that looking for that I, that inherently existent I, and we see that it is not within the five aggregates, that it is not within the mind, and we keep trying to find that pinpointable, designatable I, and we can't find it, eventually the emptiness of that I, the emptiness dawns within the mind. Yeah. So on the more sort of course level, we definitely can come to some sort of feeling for it. So for example, when we see a car and we do the meditation where we take its wheels off, or we take its parts, where we scatter all of its parts together, eventually that pinpointable car that we thought was there, that concept completely dissolves. So even if we don't understand the subtle emptiness of it, we can definitely develop like a coarser understanding.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Geshe said. And if I guess I want to make sure I checked for additional questions. I did. And so if there are no further questions, then Geshe encourages you to kind of think over these things. And if based upon your further kind of engagement with this, some questions arise, just note those down and we'll take them at the next session, which is next weekend is off, but the weekend after that.
A
really important thing to try to develop your understanding around is how an understanding of dependent origination contributes to the understanding of emptiness, and how the understanding of emptiness contributes to the understanding of dependent origination. Yeah. And also emptiness isn't just a kind of big empty vacuity. We're talking about the emptiness of something specific, the emptiness of inherent existence. And this is related to the line in the Heart Sutra where it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Thank you very much. We shall end it here. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Tetra. Love you.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great day.
Have a nice day.